Everybody would tell me that they hated my nose job, and I've never had a nose job. This is the nose I was born with. I feel like it's been debated a lot on the internet. You see this little guy? I was born with that guy. I know he pokes up a lot. Okay, I'm okay with it. I actually love it. But so many people made fun of me for my botched nose job that doesn't exist. I have been tattooing for 16 and a half years now, which when I say that out loud, makes me feel so old, and I'm not. My story does start about 7 years prior to New York Ink. I had already been tattooing 7 years, and it was a lot different. You know, the shops that I worked in were not giant palaces of tattoo shops in a big cool city. Tattooing was a lot more underground back then. A lot more associated with nefarious things that I can't even begin to tell you about on this video. I first started to think about becoming a tattoo artist when I was 14 years old. When I was in high school, kids would literally give me their lunch money to sit there in study hall and draw fake tattoos all over them. I actually went to a local tattoo shop to try to get an apprenticeship. They literally just chased me out of the shop. They were like, get the hell out of here. I visited another tattoo shop asking more questions, how do I learn? And they told me that my apprenticeship would cost around $3 grand. When you're 14 years old, and we're talking 16 years ago, it seemed like $1 million. I thought my dream to become a tattoo artist was never gonna happen. I had just graduated high school, just the month prior, and I was working at this terrible, terrible department store selling furniture. And the whole thing sucked, but it's what I had to do because that's life, right? One of the girls that I worked with at the department store wanted to get a job at a local tattoo shop as a body piercer. And she said, could I give her a ride after work? I said, no problem. So I gave her a ride. She tried out for the job, and while she was trying out for the job, the artist came up to me and said, you know, we heard that you were interested in tattooing. Your friend says you can draw really well. And I'm like, yeah, that's basically what I do at work all day because I can't sell any furniture. They asked me to draw a couple drawings for them. They picked out random, ideas. They were like, give us an evil goldfish or a tribal name, and I would just draw these ideas out. And the owner came up to me and said, hey, you want to do a tattoo? And I was like, right now? And he said, yep, right now. And I was like, okay. That is how I got my apprenticeship. And I was very, very lucky to do so. Most people do not get an apprenticeship or get into a tattoo shop like that. I realized very quickly that the reason that they gave me the apprenticeship was because they wanted to have a woman in the tattoo shop. This was a true novelty at the time. I didn't know or even have heard of another female tattoo artist at this point. Granted, there were plenty of female artists that came before me. I just was completely uneducated when it came to tattooing, and the kind of artists that I was with weren't teaching me that stuff. And I actually picked it up pretty quick to the point where I could finally leave that shop and move on to another shop that I thought would be better for me. Unfortunately, I went through that process about 5 times before I found a tattoo shop that actually did take me serious as an artist. I really reached my artistic pinnacle when I started working in Philadelphia at this tattoo shop called Deep Six. At the time, it was owned by an artist, Paul Acker, who was really amazing at color realism. We had become friends from working tattoo conventions together, and I had always looked up to his work, and when he gave me the opportunity to work in the shop, I was thrilled. I actually considered doing part-time in Philly, part-time in Los Angeles, because one of my best friends lived in LA, and I would travel every other month to tattoo out of her photo studio. So I started traveling more to California, and I was actually looking at a second apartment out there when I got a really interesting phone call, and that was for a job on a TV show in New York City, and that show was called New York Ink. I feel like this is where most of the people that follow me probably have first seen my work. I remember the first time I saw Miami Ink on TV, and I was shocked. I had already been tattooing, I think, for about 2 years at the time, and I was like, people want to watch this? People actually give a shit about what we're doing? This is crazy. When I started shooting television on New York Ink, I was terrible. When I say I was really bad at it, I was, because my nerves were shot. I was definitely, very intimidated. I felt I was very in over my head. Even from day one, starting to shoot the TV show was really intense. Now there's a lot of TV shows about tattooing on TV, and a lot of tattooers that have experienced that, which is awesome. When I started doing it, there was not that many and nobody that I knew that had been on TV. So I had nobody to ask advice from, nobody to talk to about it. And I remember walking up to the tattoo shop on day one of filming. They did not prep us. I had no idea what I was going in for. I just showed up for work and they said, okay, we're gonna put a microphone on you. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was the first time that ever happened. And they said, okay, go in, just go in. And I walked in the shop and we were immediately acting and on camera. And they were just getting all my reaction, talking about things like, hey, Megan, I talked to you on the phone. It's nice to meet you in person. I'm like, in my head, we never talked on the phone. I don't know who you are. And I have no idea what the I'm doing, right? Just threw me to the wolves right into it. And then I fucked up the scene, of course, because I didn't know what was going on. And they're like, cut. All right, let's try this again. Granted, it's not like a scripted show. We didn't have scripts or anything like that. It was reality. It's just that I was completely unprepared for that reality. I was in the middle of trying to create some kind of connection with the artists and crew members of the show to try to have some kind of friendship base, so I felt a little bit more comfortable, and at the same time trying to do a really good job at something that I've never ever done before and had no training or prep. I was often told when I was talking on camera that I did a terrible job, that I needed to step it up or I would be taken off the show. And a lot of it was because I was just so inside myself. I overthought everything that I said. I was scared to say something wrong or do something wrong or look stupid, I knew that, people could be vicious, and this was a long time ago. So even, then I knew that once this went on TV, everybody would see me and hear me, and I just was so concerned at what people would think of me. It got to be about 4 weeks into shooting, and then we were taking a 2-week break. And all the producers pulled me aside and they said, look, Megan, you have to be really serious. If this is something that you want to do, you really have to get your shit together. You have to learn to be comfortable. You have to care less what people think. Own it, get into it. Or, when you come back, don't bother. And I went home for 2 weeks and I cried. I was miserable. Honestly, I was completely miserable filming the first half of that show. I just felt like I didn't belong there at all. But then I sat there and I thought about all the effort that I put into being in New York, the amount of money that it cost me, how hard everything I was doing. And I remembered to not be so hard on myself for choosing to go outside my comfort zone and choosing to try something that was really, really hard. And I said, F it. I'm gonna come back and I'm not gonna give a shit what people think of me. I'm just gonna be authentically myself. And at least I know that if they don't think that that's a good job, at least I was true to myself, right? I put so much effort into my career to get me here. Let's at least try. I'll never forget being on television for the first time, the show coming out on TV. People were really cool and kind to me most of the time, but there were a few things that people really picked out and made fun of me for, and it drove me insane. When people make fun of your appearance, online, it can really be damaging. I'm really thankful that it didn't take me to a damaging place because again, I just chose to own it and just said, F it, if people don't like it, I don't care. But it is really hard to deal with that level of criticism. I know a lot of people have to deal with that on the internet now because everybody's on the internet commenting about everything. After shooting that first season of New York Ink, I did 2 more seasons of that, and then another TV show called America's Worst Tattoos, and then another TV show called Bondi Ink. At that time, I was like, what do I do next? I opened up my tattoo studio. It's called Grit and Glory, and it's in the Lower East Side in New York City. About 6-7 years ago now. It all kind of blurs together. I opened it up with 2 really good friends of mine, Veronica and Emily. It's really a cool, interesting thing to have started off in the tattoo industry as a solo woman. A woman tattoo artist who didn't know any other women or had any other women around to feel comfortable with. And I sort of felt like I carried that solo vibe throughout most of my career. Almost all the shops I worked in, I was the only woman. And then even on TV, in the beginning on New York Ink, I was the only woman. It was a great opportunity for me to be able to open up a tattoo shop in New York City that's owned by women, and most of the artists, not all, but most of the artists there are women. And it's not even because we said this is a women's only shop, because we've had plenty of men work there, but it's a place where women feel comfortable. And it makes me feel just fucking awesome to be able to help create that space for women. That was something that I yearned for so much throughout most of my career.